you guys? Welcome to another episode of the Pop Culture Galaxy podcast. I'm Mark Bridge and I'm here with Zach Worsner.
That's me.
And welcome to our second week of the James Bond retrospective, where this episode we're going to talk about the second film in the series, From Russia with Love.
Yeah, Matt Monroe.
And it's actually the fifth book, which is funny because the last movie was actually the sixth book in the series. This is the fifth book, but it chronologically takes place after the first film. So work with that. Whatever you think.
What's especially fun with that is that the opening of Dr. No addresses the cliffhanger ending of From Russia with Love.
All right.
Where he gets his new gun, and and then in hindsight, it's like it's weird.
So it's the second film directed by Terrence Young. He's back.
Yeah.
And side note, From Russia with Love, the book was actually on JFK's favorite book list. So that made the producers super happy that it was mentioned in JFK's repertoire of novels to read. So they were like, oh my god, we're so excited to do this one. Came out in 1963, October of 1963, which is just a year after the first one. It's crazy.
Hey, no CGI effects, no CGI houses.
And, yeah.
And different production.
Yeah, and what makes it even crazier, it was being shot in 1963, April of 1963. So it was like a quick turnaround time, quick release. Like, you don't hear about that stuff in movies anymore, you know? Like,
and if you do, it's a bad sign.
Right? That's how I knew Fantastic Four was going to be shit. Because they shot it and they wrapped it in a month. I'm just like, wait, what? And then the following year it came out. It was like, yeah, no. But again,
if Fantastic Four pops up on Disney Plus, will you watch it?
No.
Stick to your guns.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, Mark has vowed never to watch that movie.
Never watch it.
And he's stuck with it.
Because I've had ample opportunities to watch that movie. It coming on HBO or some other free site, and just like, nope.
What about when they make an actual MCU Fantastic Four? Then will you watch?
Then I'll worse not watch it, because it's like, why bother? You know what I mean?
Historical significance.
Yeah. All right, so back to James Bond. Couple of things here. Sophia Trench came back.
Yeah.
In the opening. It's like, wow. I mean, I don't think it's the first time a recurring, not Bond girl, because she wasn't really a Bond girl. She was a girl that was in a Bond movie for a couple of seconds.
That makes her a Bond girl,
yeah.
Damn it.
Yeah.
She wore no pants and a shirt. She was hot. She was a Bond girl.
Yeah. So she, I think there's other films where other girls came back, right? If I'm not mistaken.
I don't think so.
I know Leah is coming back for the new Bond film, Bond 25.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think.
Yeah, no, I think, no. She's the
Wait,
only...
Wasn't a Bond girl also reprised as well? An actual Bond girl came back, like, even for a second or something?
The closest that we got was Maud Adams in The Man with the Golden Gun.
Right.
Who the same actor, Maud Adams, was the title character in Octopussy.
Right.
But aside from that, I don't think so.
Yeah. Another first, Q is introduced. Well, officially introduced, played by Desmond Llewellyn. And what else? First cold opening.
Yes, and a good one.
Yep, first cold opening, where basically you think Bond is going through a little garden, and then he gets choked out, and he's like, "Wait a minute, Bond is dead? Can't be." and it turns out to be is it because Mission Impossible didn't come out yet, right? The TV series.
No,
Was
not
it?
yet.
Right. So this is like the first mask off kind of
Maybe it's where they
sequence.
got it from.
Yeah, maybe. um, and then also the opening credits, gets a little bit elaborate here with the theme of the gypsies, which
Oh yeah.
comes around in the midpoint in the movie.
Lots of close-ups of bellies and thighs.
Yeah, man, that was a nice opening,
The
nice
lights
opening credits.
projected onto it. Very cool.
Woo-hoo. But however, it still had the James Bond theme. There is a theme song in the movie. It's just played at the end instead of the beginning.
Yeah.
And I want to say the theme was being woven into the score as well, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The From Russia with Love song. It plays most notably in the bedroom seductions.
Yeah.
Oh my god, so good. Ooh.
And what else? Oh, so now we have the cast. We have Blofeld, but not seen, just heard, and this is where you get all these sort of the Doctor Evil influence with the cat.
Yep.
I wonder, was the cat in the novel? I don't know. Was it? Or was that just a movie made
I
up
don't know.
thing? Is this
I
a
haven't
visual
read
thing?
that one.
And he had the Spectre logo on his ring. And you have so I guess Robert Shaw plays the villain technically, but is really a henchman. So it's like a hybrid.
It's a really cool, unique structure for the movie in that its bad guys are like that. Kind of we mentioned last week how 007 movies generally aren't spy movies, but they're action adventures. From Russia with Love is pretty much a spy movie.
Right.
It's
right.
actually like maybe the best combination of the two, maybe even in the whole series.
Yeah.
Where it's a spy movie and it's got that storyline that plays out and keeps you guessing, but it's done in a unique way where it doesn't keep you guessing what's happening. It keeps you guessing when everyone's going to find out.
Yeah.
Because the characters don't know anything, but the audience knows everything right from the start.
Yeah, because it's very like it's pretty much spy-like in terms of it's like the evil organization is playing two sides against each other. They want to start a hot war instead of a cold one, right? Between Russia and Britain, and pit the two sides against each other. So it's very clandestine of the plot. So Robert Shaw plays Donald Grant, Red. Typical Russian name, I guess, right?
So good. Robert Shaw. He does not speak until he's on the train.
Yeah, right? Because you're thinking it's one of those mute villains that just don't speak English at all, so there's just like, okay, let's just let his presence speak for itself. He wasn't dubbed, right? He was actually him, right?
I think it was him.
Yeah.
And apparently all of his like he did record lines, but Peter Hunt in editing was just like, let's just not have him speak at all until the train.
Yeah.
Cut.
Yeah.
Cut. And there are a couple scenes where he's on the train and he's speaking, but they had train sounds playing on top of it, so you couldn't hear him.
Yeah.
You could just see that it was happening, and you could get the storytelling across in the same way.
Yeah.
And they decided let's not have him talk until he's, doing a fake identity. Oh my god, so good.
Yeah. Then you had Pedro Armendáriz, which was his last movie, and tragically he found out he was sick. He really wanted to finish this film. He plays the head of the MI6 station in Istanbul.
Not Constantinople.
Yeah. Yeah, I kept.
Thank you.
It's funny. I kept thinking of Assassin's Creed while I was watching it. It was like, oh my god, it's so cool.
Wait, do they go to Istanbul?
Yeah, in Revelation.
I barely remember that one.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a beautiful city where they shot it. Um, the production value on that shit, holy crap, they get a bang for their buck. I mean, I wonder, could you still shoot at those places, or will they like tax you super high or something like that, or is it forbidden now? Because nobody does it anymore, right?
I mean, they did in The World Is Not Enough, but that was 20 years ago now.
Right. You know what I mean? Like,
they probably, got some tensions here and there. I mean,
because you know what would have benefited from that location? Game of Thrones. Like, I could have potentially seen them using that as a backdrop for Dorne if they didn't screw Dorne up royally. Like, that could have been the perfect Dorne. You know what I mean? But
I don't know what you mean, because I don't know what Dorne is. But if it wasn't in the last season, I don't know.
By the time you saw season 8, Dorne was gone.
R.I.P.
Yeah, but you know what you missed out? Speaking of James Bond, what you missed out on Diana Rigg.
I know, when she got cast, I was like, oh no, I wish she had been cast in a show that I want to watch.
You missed out on, and it's funny, it's like her character is night and day with her character from James Bond. It's like she's demure and pretty and stuff. In this one, she's like harsh. She don't give a F. It's like, yeah. But you would have gotten a kick out of Diana Rigg playing Lady Olenna in Game of Thrones. Maybe one day you'll do a watch through and go back and see all the stuff you missed.
I'll never rule it out. It'll happen at some point, someday,
Yeah. But yeah, back to From Russia with Love. Then you have Lottie Lenya, who's placed number 3.
Oh, yeah.
Number 3. So you got number 1s and number 2s and number 3s. It's like
Lottie Lenya is a singer.
Yeah.
She's a legend in her field. She was married to Kurt Weill.
Mm-hmm.
She my brother who's currently living in Ukraine doing music, studying music. She's one of his biggest influences.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, a picture of her was the logo for his first band.
Oh, really?
Which is really fun. Fortunately, they never became famous enough that there was any estate problems.
Oh.
They were never like, oh, we gotta crack down on your record sales. It's like, well, we haven't sold any yet, so when we do, we'll let you know. But yeah, she's great, and she's great in this. She's like 5'0" and 80 pounds.
Yeah.
And is just terrifying nonetheless.
Mm-hmm. Now we get to our Bond girl.
Yeah.
Daniela Bianchi. Or Bianchi? Yeah, Bianchi.
Yeah. I like her.
She's so gorgeous.
She's one of the greats.
Now, I got something for you. Zach. So her name is Tatiana Romanova, right?
Yes.
Basically, she plays a Russian spy. This movie came out in 1963.
Mm-hmm.
There's a comic book character created by Stan Lee in 1964. Now, I don't have proof of this, but in 1964, a comic book character was created by Stan Lee as a particular Russian spy for Iron Man. Her name was Natalia Romanova.
Hawkeye.
AKA Black Widow. Is there a coincidence?
I mean, I think Stan and Marvel have always been pretty overt about their comics being of their time and kind of coming out of other stuff. I'm drawing a blank right now, but I know that there's a bunch of other characters whose names are
it's
drawn stuff.
Tony Stark himself was influenced by Howard Hughes. That's why his father's name was Howard Stark. So that very much around that time period. Yeah, so Stan is and all his artists are always influenced by sort of the pop culture or real world applications around that era. So that's why I'm wondering, because James Bond pretty much got popular. I mean, yes, Goldfinger was the one that really skyrocketed it, but like it was beginning to pick up its popularity around 62, 63, and 64 when Black Widow was created, I can see a world in which I would see Stan creating, using uh, Tatiana Romanova as a, especially there was a scene later on in the movie where number 3 is talking to her, and she kept saying, is in the hotel when she's telling her to get the door. She's like, Romanoff, right? It's like, yeah, yeah. But yeah, and when the first introduction to Black Widow, granted, Tatiana has blonde hair, but when Natalia was first introduced, she was brunette, but it's very cut in the same fashion as Tatiana. I mean, they didn't want to overtly copy, so I could see them like, okay, just make her a brunette instead of blonde, but have the same kind of cut. When she was introduced, she had the same kind of outfit. Like, she didn't have the black suit. Black suit came later. She had the same kind of like pencil skirt and stuff like that going on with Tatiana. So I'm just wondering if it was I was trying to look it up to see if Stan ever mentioned if he was influenced by Tatiana, but nothing really came up. But I'm just sort of like putting the time period and two together in the name, so yeah.
I can see it.
Yeah. But just as a sign as James Bond was still in the B movie era, because I guess you could call James Bond at the time a B movie, right? It wasn't really one of their A cinematic events.
I think even the first one was such a success that they had more money for the second.
They got more money.
For the third.
It's. I mean, they got like if Fast and the Furious, Too Fast, Too Furious got more money than the first, but it was still considered a B movie. You know what I mean?
I guess well. I don't think the movies considered themselves B movies.
Right. Yeah.
Which is why they turned out so great. But there's definitely, for the movies and the books at the time, there was, there's always the gatekeepers, elitists who are like, oh, well, when are you gonna write something more serious, Ian Fleming? And he's like, never. Fuck you.
Yeah. I mean, the reason why I kind of associate the B movie status with this is because of the casting of Daniela Bianchi, because she was a beauty pageant, and apparently her English wasn't so good. She's Italian. They dubbed it. It's another dubbed voice. Barbara Jefford did the dub for her. So it's like one of those things that we're just gonna hire a model for the lead role.
I think that's all Harry. I think that's all Harry Saltzman. I think he was the kind of guy who was just like,
he loved the ladies.
We need to get the most beautiful woman in the entire world. He's kind of like a charming version of like the icky executive,
Right.
Or it's like he's rich and who's more hedonistic and not misogynistic.
Was he a Harvey, you think, back then?
No, I that's exactly the comparison that I was trying to make. Was like, I think he was like a little Harvey in his control of his movies, but much more of a benevolent figure.
Right.
If I had to guess. I mean, no one had anything negative to say about him, and any of the special features, of course, they're all, special features on an official Bond set. But, the story of Harry Saltzman and how he wound up having to sell his stake in the Bond movies to Albert Broccoli, so it went from being Saltzman and Broccoli to just Broccoli. Somewhere in the early Roger Moore era, I believe.
Right.
It's kind of a sign that he was just the kind of guy who would rather spend all his money on lavish parties for the sake of the people making his movies, rather than like spend them on a yacht where he could be gross.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think that he was gross.
Right.
At the very least, not by modern,
Yeah. Yeah.
by modern standards. Maybe he would. Maybe he was like, hey, she's got a great ass.
Yeah.
But I don't. But I don't think he was like, well,
And maybe because of the times, let's be real, the '60s were a swinging era, that it was sort of be acceptable. It's like kind of like, okay, let's have a meeting at my hotel room. You knew what that meant, and it was you're down to F type of situation. It was kind of like the transaction of the '60s, and that it kind of just became an outdated mode of transaction in the '80s, '90s, to the point where it's like, oh, gross, I don't want to do it.
yeah.
Yeah.
But there's no reputation.
Right.
Like people, like there are film producers of that era who had bad reputations,
Mm-hmm.
but people still made movies with them.
Right.
Just like, people were still making movies with Harvey Weinstein until the end, and people are still making movies with Woody Allen.
Yeah.
There's, people, producers and directors had reputations in the 50s and 60s and before then that would be like, okay, it's a little risky working with this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as I know, Saltzman did not have that reputation.
Yeah.
So I think that I'd give him the benefit of the doubt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He made these movies, but it's like it's kind of like Bond himself. Does he use women? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Is he a abusive person? Probably not. It's that line of hedonism, not misogynism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, we'll give it to Harry.
Yep.
Harry.
And then,
Harry rocks.
And then, of course, he still had to hire some more supermodels. You had Vida and Zora.
Oh my God, the gypsy fight!
Oh God.
I mean, oh man, I'd love to play that movie at like NYU or something.
Yes.
And be like, this is the part where the gypsies fight. What?
Get it off!
My vapors.
And to top that off, they allow Bond to solve that fight by, hey, you choose. Of course, how does he choose? We leave it up to your imagination, but we know how he chose. We know. But yeah.
Oh my God, that fight is so hot.
Oh yes.
It's like 63. Like, it's kind of like, okay, you watch Dr. No, and like parents groups get all worked up.
Mm-hmm.
And they go, oh my God, the movie's so violent and so sexy. For think of the children. And then in the very next movie, they're like, we've got two exotic beauties, fighting with like cleavage and legs, and it's super hot.
Yep.
It's so hot it's still hot now. There's a lot of stuff that was hot that is not necessarily hot by today's standards.
Mm-hmm.
That is still hot.
It is.
And like I was like watching it by myself and like, hey, oh, it's hot. And it's like they're going to like, the parents groups and whatever, the squares, and just being like, at me, bro.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like when like a new Mortal Kombat comes out, and they're like, well, we learned from the controversy before, and that it was really good for us, so we're going even further now. What are you gonna do about it? Give us more publicity? I dare you. And that's the way I see that scene.
Yeah.
It adds nothing to the plot.
Nothing at all.
But I can't imagine it without it.
Yeah. So it's played by Eliza Alisa Gore and Martine Beswick. Martine is actually Jamaican.
Ah.
I haven't seen recent photos, but the behind the scenes when she's a little bit older that they did for the Blu-ray, which came out I want to say 5 years ago or something like that. She was looking still gorgeous. You know what I mean? As a sort of silver fox. Well, she's not silver. She didn't have gray hair or anything like that. But
what you're saying is it would be an honor.
Yes, of course. Of course. Speaking of which, I'm going on a tangent. You know what old lady I'll still like to, get with Helen Mirren.
Helen Mirren is so gorgeous.
It's like,
Like, holds up.
yeah, you know what I mean. So it's like, because I've seen movies when she's in older movies, when she was young, and I'm like, wow, she's gorgeous. Too bad she's old now. And when you see her old, oh my god. Excuse me, miss.
Like,
Woo.
still, yeah.
Still got it. Still got
Yep.
it. So,
It's like Grace and Frankie. There's that line of it would be an honor. I don't know if either of us are going to enjoy any of this, but it would be an honor. I would never turn down that opportunity.
mm-hmm.
And that is the Lily Tomlin.
Yes.
With Jane Fonda, you know she's down to play.
Mm-hmm.
And now we are gross.
I actually had a crush on Jane Fonda too. It was the first time I saw her. I was living in Jamaica. I remember mom bought a Jane Fonda workout tape. That's the first time I saw her. I didn't know who she was. I didn't even know she was an actor. Nothing. I was just like, ooh, what's this? Workout tape.
Jane Fonda workout tape. That's good. I didn't meet her because she was so exhausted and just didn't want to talk to anybody. Mm-hmm. But I saw her at a party once.
Nice.
And I wanted to just be like, hey, how's it going? But she was like surrounded by like guards and publicists. And it was just like, oh, no one's getting in there. She's only here because she has to be, and she's going to be gone as soon as she can. Yeah. And she was gone very, very soon.
Right. So speaking of the whole doubling down on the risque, there was a scene, although it wasn't Daniela Bianchi, there was a scene with the first time Bond sees, well, it wasn't the first time Bond sees her, but when she ends up in Bond's hotel, through the window, you see a pretty naked.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, that wasn't Daniela. That was a body double.
She mentioned, she mentioned like, because she was very conservative. It's like, that's the thing, right? He gets all the hot chicks. He gets all the hot chicks to be in their movie, but they're all conservative. They're like, no, I don't want to show this. I don't want to show that. It's like,
yeah, they're so conservative. That's why they end up with like Berlusconi, who's just like Caligula. Those crazy Italians. They're so wacky.
Yeah. So it's like, and she does mention that Sean Connery, during the scene when she's in the bed, he kept. It was a challenge to keep that thing up, her sheet up, because Sean Connery kept messing with her, and of course I could see that.
Yeah, that's a little. Ew, Sean, come on, dude. You're just trying to do the scene, man. Come on, Sean, stop. Too much.
But it's another example of the times. It's like the first time you're meeting. It's like, already, you know what this is. We're gonna have sex. We're going to fuck, right?
Like it also that stuff.
No setup.
Very much in like a moment, scene to scene, who you're doing it with, what the mood of the set is, the consent practices were definitely different in '63.
Yeah.
If a young Sean Connery tried to pull that off with like a young, any starlet now, he'd probably, if not get fired, get talked to very sternly. Mm-hmm. But there's also like, depending on how game they were, it could, be like, hey, this is how we're chilling out while we're shooting the scene. As long as everything is understood.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
If she's just like, let's do whatever it takes to get the scene. Let's relax. Let's chill. Let's have a happy set. Oh, come on, man. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I'm just spitballing here.
So yeah, the scene was pretty hot. he just met her, just like, all right, let's have sex,
That
and
scene is so good. That scene is so good that it became the scene that they used to screen test all James Bond actors.
yeah. Oh, nice, nice. But yeah, she's
I want to see those screen tests now. I want to see
me
like,
too.
Roger Moore and Pierce Brosnan in that scene.
As a matter of fact, they did mention that the screen test uh, was with not with um, Sean, but with the guy who played the doctor he killed in, or the professor he killed in the first movie. He's the one that auditioned with Daniela, um, and he's the one who plays the. He does the voice. I think he does the voice of Blofeld, or he plays the body of
No, I
Blofeld.
think he's the body.
Body, yeah.
I think.
Yes, yeah, he was the body. He was this sort of heavyset guy who does the voice
Right.
of Blofeld. Um, Now another highlight of this movie is that train fight.
Train fight!
That was an intense fight,
Fighting
man.
on the train. And that's all, like we said, last week, that's all Terrence Young and Peter Hunt, who are two, like I said before, they invented the modern action movie. That fight is 40 years before Jason Bourne and the Paul Greengrass or Doug Liman in the first one, right?
Yeah.
Those quick cuts, like, that's from Russia with Love.
Yeah.
That's that train fight. It's so fast. It just cuts from punch to punch to punch. There's no long. I don't know what the average shot length in that sequence is, but it's very short. It's got to be well under 1 second.
Yeah, it was like for a movie that was made in the '60s. I was watching when it was done. I was like, wow, that was tense. You know what I mean?
There's no music. They break the window immediately, so that like the loud sound of the train is playing. They shoot out the light, so the light gets all dark and blue, and it's great. There's only one shot, which because of the editing is like 3 or 4 different shots.
Yeah.
But there's only one shot where they use stunt people. The rest of it was all Connery and Shaw.
Yeah, because you could see their faces too. It was one of those. It was like yeah. And going back to the Vita and Zora fight, they talked about how they were training for this fight. It was like choreographed to the T, where they had to learn it. But on the day of the shooting, Terrence just said, "Screw it, go at each other." Go. It was like the choreography went out the window, and it was just like, "Oh, let's get the intensity of that fight. Let's just fight. Let them fight. Like, you go and kill it. Try to kill it. Go, go, go." And they almost hurt each other pretty much.
Yeah, because when the choreography is super important because it looks like when I've talked to like martial arts actors, they've always said that doing a fight scene is like a dance. And like I've always said that like MGM musicals of the 20s are like the big budget action films of their day.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of the same when you have Keanu Reeves and whoever, fighting each other. It's the same, I got to learn my moves, I got to learn my placement, got to know when to jump, got to, don't want to actually hurt anybody. And I think what they were getting at with the gypsy fight was they learned their moves so well it didn't even look like they were fighting anymore.
Yeah.
And I think they still used that choreography.
Yeah.
But we're like, let's do it dirty. Let's not do it like you actually know it.
Yeah.
Let's do it like you're actually trying to kill each other.
Yeah.
And again, like they get the camera like in there. They basically put the camera in between their boobs. That's how close up the close-ups are. And it just, all of the action in the Terrence Young, Peter Hunt Bond movies has just a completely different energy than anything else of their time, and a lot of stuff even now. especially that fight where when the gypsy camp actually starts to blow up, and Bond is just like working his way through, beating up and shooting guys,
Yeah.
not randomly, but just as he makes his way
Mm-hmm.
across the camp. Like that could be done in such a plain, flat style, but it's not.
Yep.
It's gorgeous. It's awesome.
I think they were saying he doesn't. When he was doing like the shootout gun scenes and stuff like that, Terrence hated doing close-ups. He wanted wide angles of like that action, which you saw a lot of, and especially there's a lot of explosions in this movie. The boat scenes, big explosions, and then the helicopter scene, which is another highlight, where Bond faces off against those dudes in the helicopter. Was crazy. Even though there was a slight mistake, and I tried to listen to the commentary. I rewound it, put it on the commentary to hear if they mention it. So, scene goes, the helicopter is chasing Bond. Bond goes under a bunch of rocks where he could get like a good sight on them. From there, shoots the guy who's throwing the grenades down. So he shoots him, and the grenade drops in the helicopter, which I could see where a lot of those video games took their influences from, where you shoot a guy with the grenade and it just drops right there.
Yep.
So the grenade drops in the helicopter, blows it up, lands, big explosions. Pretty cool, pretty awesome, right? Because it's all practical. It's happening. That's a lot of influence on Christopher Nolan, where he wants everything to be practical, be done in camera. However, there's a scene where you could tell it's a James Bond. It's a stunt guy, Sean Connery. He's running down the cliff, and I think what was supposed to happen is the stunt guy was to go down the cliff, and there was a shot where it's supposed to be Sean Connery running when he's on the level field. But what happens is, I think Sean was running to, it's like there's a point where you have the cliff and the level field, but there's like a blocked scene where the stuntman would have disappeared after he jumps off the cliff, and then Sean would have kept on running. But because Sean was was running to the scene, to the cliff, so you saw someone like bound down running. So for a moment you saw two Bonds.
Oh,
like
wow, I gotta go back and see that. I didn't even notice.
Yeah, I was like, oh my god. Because I was like, wait, who's that guy? And I had to rewind it and move it in slow-mo, and I could see, I was like, oh shit. They didn't cut too fast. They didn't cut quick enough.
Oh, that's funny.
But yeah, it was a cool scene. Other than that gaff, there was a cool sequence.
Yeah, I mean, the structure is so weird. Like, at the very beginning, they set up all these bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
Then in the middle is like basically the story from the book.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end, it's like it's Grant, and then it's the helicopter, and then it's the guy, Walter Gotell, who would be General Gogol later, on the boats, and then Lada Lena, or Rosa Klebb. And he just takes them out like one by one, like one scene after the other, and just each scene is just a different kind of action beat.
Yeah.
And it's really, I don't want to say weird because that sounds negative, but it's definitely atypical for how you would expect the movie to play out. And a lot of it was because a lot of the characters in the books just didn't get their comeuppance.
Yeah.
Because there's a cliffhanger ending. And he was just like, well, let's just make new scenes where he blows them up.
Yeah.
and they did, and it's part of why the ending is so good, because it's not like here's one long action scene. Here's like 4 different action scenes that are totally different, but they're gonna be basically one after another.
Well, you know what's funny though? I guess because of the almost weird structure of it. When the movie ended, it kind of came as a shock to me. Wait, stop. Because it just didn't follow that, not necessarily the Bond structure, but even a typical movie structure where you can tell the climax is happening. Like, yeah, when they got on the boat, you can tell that they're moving towards facing off with the bad guys, right? But the way how in the before that happens, you had number 3 and number 5 in the room, and you know the whole scene where you think number 3 is gonna get the stab, and then he kills number 5, and they're like, okay, take care of Bond, right? And then the other guy with the cross, the thing,
Yeah,
scar,
Walter Gotell.
yeah, he, you know, right away, it's like that scene comes right after where he's chasing Bond, right? So it comes as a surprise. But you're saying, okay, he's just a henchman. We're going to get rid of the henchman, then we're going to go to the big climax in the movie. But then after that scene, it's in a hotel, and number 3 comes, and he just, this is like, shoots her, well, what's her name?
Tatiana
shoots her. And then it cuts to just the typical, the boat and the making of, and then it ends. I'm like, wait, what?
Well, it's kind of the first in a line of final battles where there's always one left,
Mm-hmm.
and they show up near the end to be like a more of an emotional climax than
Mm-hmm.
like the big action one. Like the big action climax is you know, blowing up the lake.
Mm-hmm.
Which doesn't really make sense, but like it looks awesome, so
Mhm.
that's all that matters, and that is the rule that should be followed by these kinds of action movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, does it make sense for him to, you know, throw the stuff and then blow up the lake? It's like, not really, but do you believe it? Yeah, then go with that.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, there's so much the Christopher Nolan style of like realism being more important than style.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so funny that he's so influenced by James Bond movies, which are like exactly the opposite.
It.
It's like, it doesn't matter if it's realistic, but do you believe it?
Yeah.
And if you believe it, then we've done our job.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, and it also helps that like they do it in camera. Like they really do blow up, you know, hundreds of gallons of gasoline on that lake. I don't know how environmentally friendly that was. I don't know what the rules were in '63, but that whole sequence was a showstopper. And then after that, you know, you're not gonna have a crazy fist fight with Lotelania,
Mm-hmm.
but you can have a moment where Bond has her pinned down, but doesn't really know how he can take her down because she's got her little foot everywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you have Tatiana being like, okay, here's my last chance to choose which side I'm on.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Yeah. I guess that's the, you know, it was my sort of modern sensibility getting, because I usually say I bring myself down to the level of the era so I can fully enjoy it on that experience, knowing what people must have thought seeing something like that for the first time. And I guess maybe I was just thrown off in terms of like, yeah, the lake stuff was pretty dope, but I wouldn't consider it on today's standards to be the climactic end scene, right? It was just more like a bridge to the actual big boss, so to speak.
It's kind of, well, and that scene was like the exact, like the brainchild of Harry Saltzman.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if they hadn't have had that scene, there really would be no massive explosion scene.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the kind of showman who was like, "No, we gotta make stuff go boom."
Yeah.
Before this movie ends,
Mm-hmm.
because the fights, even compared to Doctor No, which has Crab Key blowing up at the end,
Yeah.
even though they're visceral and dirty, you know, it would be a different kind of movie if the biggest fight in the movie was versus Red Grant.
Yeah.
And then, you know, dodging the helicopter is insane.
Mm-hmm.
It's great, but it's not the kind of show-stopping, let's blow everything up.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, we gotta blow everything up.
Yeah.
And they did, and it works. It's definitely different compared to other you know, big action scenes that end later Bond movies.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still like, I had to rewind it at one point because when what really sells it is just showing the boats later just blowing up more.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one bit where these two sailors,
Oh yeah.
and it blows up, and I'm like, did that guy get blown up?
Yeah.
Because the explosion is so, maybe it's like a little bit of intentional or unintentional forced perspective, but it
Mm-hmm.
looks like a guy gets just like vaporized by an explosion. I went through it frame by frame, and I was like, oh wait, no, there he is, he's okay, he looks like he's fine. But that scene is like, thank God they shot on the water,
Yeah.
because like people got set on fire by accident.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's a weird thing in the special features. They talk about how it's so funny. It's just such a different time. How like now when a stuntman gets injured, they they reluctantly put out a press release, and it's like, oh, a stuntman got injured, or even worse,
Mm-hmm.
and it becomes big news in a bad way.
Mm-hmm.
Every but in the special features for this, they like bragged about it. They're like, when we shot this, 3 stuntmen got critically burned.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, whether or not that's true, like, we don't know if it's true. But they wanted that story out there.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, this movie is so awesome, it burned 3 stuntmen.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. Like, the only time that still happens is when Tom Cruise does
Mm-hmm.
something.
Mm-hmm.
When Tom Cruise hurts his ankle and
You're
they
like,
put that in the trailer,
yeah.
you go, I've got to see that.
Yeah.
But he's really the only actor who gets that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who gets that kind of movie star, old-timey Hollywood. He hurt himself. Come see it. Come see Tom Cruise hurt himself in
Yeah.
Mission Impossible.
Because before that was Jackie Chan, right? But Jackie's too
Yeah.
old now, so it's like, yeah.
And like the whole the martial arts is like is a little different because they do hurt themselves, but it's a different vibe from like big action.
Mm-hmm.
Because Jackie Chan movies are more even closer to musicals than
Mm-hmm.
other action movies.
Yeah, yeah.
But oh my god, they blow up those guys.
Now, there's a scene I want to talk to you about. So, have you ever seen Red Sparrow?
I have.
Okay, so
J-Law.
yeah, with Jennifer Lawrence and the I can't remember the name of the person who plays the head of the one who's teaching them, the lady.
Charlotte Rampling.
Yes, right.
Charlotte Rampling is one of my old lady crushes. It would be an honor.
So there's a whole dynamic between the two, especially when she's talking about having to use your body to get things done, right?
She is a little. I see what you're getting at.
So there's a
Continue.
scene. So there's a scene in From Russia with Love where Tatiana first gets introduced to number 3.
Mm-hmm.
And they're in the office, and she's asking all these personal questions. And then she goes over to sit at the chair and touches her on her leg. It's very,
Yeah, she does.
very erotic. And I'm wondering if that influenced Red Sparrow in some way.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, yeah, Red Sparrow was not like a great movie or anything.
Mm.
Definitely had its issues, but I liked it just because it was that kind of R-rated adult spy movie / erotic thriller that you just don't ever get anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
Because everything has to be PG-13 and for the kids, and nothing can be like no one wants to be disturbed at the movies anymore.
Mm-hmm,
Um, like no one wants to be, and not even that it's a particularly challenging movie, but just no one wants to be challenged, period.
mm-hmm.
And so I liked it for that it was just like, oh, I don't know if we can do this, being code for we absolutely have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So kudos to Red Sparrow for that. But yeah, the Rosa Kleb's gayness
Mm-hmm.
is a lot more pronounced in the book, which I have not read.
All right.
But but like she much more outright tries to seduce Tatiana in that scene.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm not sure if it's even in that particular scene, but at some point she does.
Oh, you
And
mean in the book?
in the
You know,
book,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. Because that scene, she was definitely being
yeah.
seductive.
And she's like she's like touching her hair while she talks about a labor of love,
Yeah.
and it's very 1940s Hays Code, but for gayness,
Mm-hmm.
which is pretty cool when you look at it in those terms. Like it used to be that you couldn't even have people, mentioning sex at all,
Yeah.
straight people. And by James Bond era, it was so like even like in the Sean Connery movies when they're making out and everything, they're not like now I'm gonna give it to you good, honey.
Yeah.
Um, but there was no pretense as to what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
But with gay relationships, all the way up through even now, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
they can't be so overt because oh God, the children
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. Like I always say, fuck the children, but not literally. Um, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
That's why we're not allowed to go to X-Men movies anymore.
Oh my god.
Oh no, too soon, too much. Okay, but that coded language of
Mm-hmm.
like, and it's barely coded
Mm-hmm.
in From Russia with Love. Like she touches her knee and she's like, nope, 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 thank
Yeah.
you, nope,
Yeah.
nope. It's pretty cool, and it's done a lot better than it will be done in Diamonds Are Forever, but we'll get there.
And then there's a whole leg crossing situation that happens in the movie too. The basic
When?
instinct in that scene where her legs is crossed and then she uncrosses it, so you get to see a little deep
Yeah,
down on there.
well, that is sort of like reacting
Yeah,
like
yeah,
negatively
yeah,
to it,
yeah.
but it does have that
Yeah.
side effect,
Yeah.
which we appreciated very much
Yeah.
because we are pervs.
Uh,
I'm so sorry for this podcast.
Hey, man, it's
because
the-
we have revealed ourselves to be major bro pervs who just like legs,
it's the
gypsy fight.
it's the duty we decided to take when we decided to do James Bond, because you can't
Absolutely.
escape it.
I knew what I signed up for. But it's funny. How many people will take more umbrage at like the fact that we're calling it a gypsy fight instead of a Romani fight than actually what the fight's about? But
yeah. Yeah.
people are more interested in being able to judge someone immediately based on semantics
Mm-hmm.
than on the actual movie itself,
Right.
which holds up.
Yeah. Yeah.
This has been Sean Connery said that it's his favorite Bond movie. A lot of people say it's their favorite Bond movie. I don't know if it's like my number one favorite,
Mm-hmm.
but it is damn good.
Yeah.
Like it is the perfect sequel. It is, if we're sticking with the Nolan stuff, it is the Dark Knight to Batman Begins.
Mhm.
Like Batman Begins has some weird stuff in it,
Yeah.
like the Gotham City and all that, which is still fantastic. But
Mhm.
it's it's deciding what it wants to be,
Mm-hmm.
and Dr. No is kind of that same way. It throws a lot at the wall and is just like, what do we want to do? What do we want to stick with?
Mm-hmm.
And From Russia with Love says, we want all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that movie. And then the next movie, Goldfinger, takes all the stuff that wasn't taken by From Russia with Love and says, well, we want all of that. And then and it's kind of where you see the creation of like the two different Bonds, the two different styles of Bond
Mm-hmm.
that we'll see go back and forth as the series goes on.
Right. And so the scriptwriter Richard Naboom, apparently he was still working on the script while it was being shot. Do a bunch of rewrites and stuff like that. Which
It's like a modern blockbuster.
yeah, right. I mean, and the thing is, modern blockbusters that goes through a bunch of rewrites while on the set sometimes doesn't work out for him.
No, it does not.
But it's funny enough, I guess it works out for them in this movie. Having to do rewrites on the day. But
Yeah, and it's because of that team. It's
Yeah.
because and I praised him already, and I'm gonna praise him a lot more before this series is done but Peter Hunt,
Yeah.
who decided to, those it's in the special features, like the first 4 scenes of the movie after
Yeah.
the credits.
He
Um,
rearranged them.
yeah,
Yeah.
they were done one way, and he was like, "Well, if we mix them up, then they make more
Mhm.
sense."
Mhm.
And they were just like, "Okay." And I forget, was it him or I believe it was actually Terrence Young, or was it Peter Hunt who decided to put the music video after the teaser? You remember what
No,
he
I don't
said?
remember that. I just remember him talking about the four scenes, reassembling them in a different order. And another thing too, he when they were still working, they just started working on it, and he just put the scenes together. He said, "So what do you have?" And he showed the scene with the when Q shows him the briefcase, opens it, and the big explosion from dot to no and credits. That
Yeah,
was
that's
hilarious.
so good. And they show it in the special features the way he would have done it,
Yeah.
and it's so there's a you can tell when people really love movies
Mhm.
and work on movies. You can tell when people when making movies is their 9 to 5,
Yep.
and you can tell when people really love their work. And not everyone needs to love their work.
Mhm.
Like it's not a but I always get a little peeved when I hear people talk about, usually people who hate their jobs,
Mhm.
who say, I work to live, I don't live to work.
Mhm.
And I'm like, well, some people work to live to work.
Mhm.
And if they love their jobs, then good for them.
Mhm.
And you can see, depending on what their job is, we're glad that they live to work.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I think that I want to be someone who lives to work. Depending if I can, keep my current job, I'll
Mhm.
be super happy.
And you know what even makes that little thing he put together even that much spectacular? Because nowadays you got Adobe Premiere and Final Cut and Avid that you just digitally cut them together. You have
Yeah.
to
Now
splice the stuff.
nowadays I could edit that, and
Yeah.
I'm an idiot.
Right.
It's like back then, it's like scissors
Yeah.
and like scalpels or whatever those are
Yeah.
called.
Um, I,
Precision
I think
cutting.
what was it called? A Stein bed machine or something like that. Something like that, where you had to like splice it and then put
Like
it together and stitch it again, tape. It's
like that's nuts. You had to use tape.
yeah, so it's like
And the same with music in that time when they started like really doing production stuff and
Mhm.
recording individual tracks in the 60s and 70s.
Mhm.
Like they cut that stuff with tape.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
But that's like, it's an art. It's not something, when everyone can do it, it becomes a little bit less artistic because anyone can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Um and I think that's why a lot of old-timey filmmakers still like doing film
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to video, because it requires a greater craftsmanship, which thus requires a greater skill level.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um but these days, when the goal is to get it done faster and cheaper, which has always been the case, like it's never been the case that where oh, so rarely does a film crew get all the resources that they want to make a movie.
Mm-hmm.
And when they do, you end up with episode 1.
Right.
And even from Russia with Love, they talk about having gone through the budget. Like, we had more money than we did in the first one, woo, and we're out of money. So that's why they did like that crazy rear projection stuff in the special features. When I watched it, I was like, "Oh man!"
Yes,
I didn't even see it.
The chess sequence that when they're playing chess, right? The
Not
whole
even that. Well, there's that with the matte painting of the ceiling.
It was like,
and that set is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
$150,000 on that set,
Wow.
and it's such a James Bond set.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not Ken Adams style,
Mm-hmm.
who did Dr. No and would return later,
Mm-hmm.
but it's amazing. But no, what I'm talking about is the when they decided to reorder the scenes,
Mm-hmm.
they had to reshoot a couple of
Yes, yes.
couple of beats.
Mm-hmm.
So they it was no problem with Blofeld's dialogue because he you never see his face anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But with when they had to record new stuff for La Leña,
Mm-hmm.
they were like, well, we can't do new, we can't rebuild the set. That's too expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And so Peter Hunt, the greatest man who ever lived,
Mm-hmm.
says, well, why don't we take footage from the movie, make that a plate
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
we can rear project like green screen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And they had Ladalenia sit down in front of where she
It
was.
does. Yeah, yeah.
So she basically rotoscopes herself out,
Yeah.
and they do the scene that way. And when I watched the movie, it was like
You
it
didn't notice it.
100% perfect special effect.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Did not notice it one bit.
Yep.
It's a perfect special effect, and we still have problems with shitty green screen now. And it's like they did it in '63.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I did enjoy the Aladdin movie, there was
There's a couple, yeah,
yeah,
a couple moments in that one.
yeah,
But it's like that's what happens when you know, like green screen is a tool,
mm-hmm.
and like people have to use it, but Peter Hunt saw a problem and was like, let me come up with a solution.
Mm-hmm.
And he did. And I think it worked a lot better than like anyone was predicting.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were like, yeah, let Peter have his little experiment. We'll see how that works out. And then they do it, and it's like, oh my God, it's perfect.
Yep.
Okay, never mind. We take back everything we said about you, Peter.
Yeah. Now, I want to move on to, I think probably the last thing we were talking about is the music. So John Barry is back, but we talked about the sort of controversy that happened with the theme with the what was his name, Monty
Norman.
Monty Norman. Okay, so there's a riff in this that I'm wondering. I remember it being in Dr. No. The part where it goes.
That's John Barry.
Right? I'm wondering if this was him saying, I need to put my stamp on it. Okay, you got the theme, but I'm going to put at least a stamp on this. Because that comes back again in other movies, right?
That's used, if I recall correctly, the last time it's used is in Moonraker.
Right. So
it pops up a lot.
So I'm wondering if this was his sort of like, I want to make my stamp on this franchise. I can't take credit for the Bond theme, but I'm going to make an iconic theme within the Bond realm. Because yes, it's not as iconic as the main theme, but it is an iconic theme where if you hear it, oh yeah, that's James Bond.
Yeah, it's like the main theme everyone knows,
mm-hmm.
but Bond fans know. I believe it's just called 007.
Probably, yeah.
But it's hard to remember.
You know what?
The track.
You know what? It would have been. It would be the equivalent of. So you have the Star Wars theme, right? And then you have the Imperial March.
Yeah. Yeah, made for the sequel.
Yeah. But the Imperial March is just almost as iconic as the Star Wars theme itself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was just, it was just something to note while I was watching it. It was like, oh wow, yeah, that theme there. Didn't hear it in Dr. No, but it's definitely playing a lot in the movie, almost as much as the Bond theme itself. Is Barry just saying, you know what, screw you, Monty, I'm gonna insert this as much as possible.
Yeah. Although I don't know if there was a bitterness at the time,
mm-hmm.
but that's just fuel.
Yeah.
That competition of like trying to escape out of a shadow. Maybe I'm just melodramatizing
mm-hmm.
in my mind, but like that's I think that's also part of what keeps Bond so fresh all the time. Usually, when it's good,
mm-hmm.
is that they look at Dr. No and From Russia with Love and Thunderball and I guess Goldfinger,
mm-hmm.
and they go, man, how are we going to top that? It's
mm-hmm.
impossible. It's a futile effort.
Yeah.
There's no point. we got to try anyway,
Mm-hmm.
and they just give it all they've got. On the best Bond movies, you can tell that they're trying as hard as they can to top what came before, and whether or not they succeed,
Mm-hmm.
that effort shines through,
Mm.
and that's what makes Bond scrappy and special.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there is one more thing that we didn't mention yet, and we predicted last week. So funny, like because I know so many of these movies like the back of my hand. I don't even need to rewatch them.
Mm-hmm.
Although I did rewatch, I have rewatched them, and I will continue to rewatch.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some things that I don't look out for and I don't think about,
Mm-hmm.
and one of them has always been the aspect ratio.
Yes.
It's only become like recently something that I've like, oh, okay, I
Mm-hmm.
see those lines there. I was expecting them to go ultra wide
Mm-hmm.
for this one,
Yeah.
and they don't.
That's why I kept saying it still held its. Even though you said they didn't treat it as a B movie, I was thinking the aspect ratio and the choice to choose a model as your lead kept with the B movie style aesthetic of thinking. You know what I mean? Like, this is a pop culture movie. This is a popcorn movie. We're not taking things too seriously. We're gonna still shoot it in this aspect ratio, and we're still gonna hire the top models for our female leads. Screw it. We're going all in. We're not taking any of this shit seriously. I mean, yes, they're taking it seriously, obviously, but
Don't take it just seriously enough.
Yeah.
But now I'm wondering,
I think
when does it
Goldfinger.
go
I think
wide?
I
Is
think
Goldfinger
Goldfinger
gonna
goes.
go wide?
Yeah. I think that's.
We'll see.
I think Goldfinger is the transition from B movie to now we're here. Now we made it. It started from the bottom. Now we're here. Drake and on.
I
That,
got that.
yeah, I understood that reference. Yeah. So yeah, the aspect ratio is still there. I mean,
And I like it.
it was a quick.
I like that aspect ratio. It's a good.
It's a quick turnaround time from Dr. No to this. Essentially the same crew that were working on it. It's almost as if they didn't even leave the production of Dr. No and just went straight into this. As a matter of fact, the way how this ends, it was like not the end. James Bond will be back for Goldfinger. They're like, yeah, we're gonna crank these babies out.
Which they would continue for a while.
Yeah.
Saying James Bond will return in
This.
dot dot dot.
I think,
in fact, at some point they even get it wrong.
yes, that was mentioned that they said he will return in a movie that wouldn't come out until another time.
If I recall correctly, it's The Spy Who Loved Me ends with James Bond will return in For Your Eyes Only, but then they decided to do Moonraker next.
Yeah.
I might be wrong with that one, but
I mean, we'll get
sure.
to it. We'll see which one they got wrong. But yeah, as far as what I think about the general movie, at first I thought I was gonna like Dr. No more. Like, while it was going on, I was like, I think I enjoyed Dr. No more than this, especially the camera work and the cinematography. But I think once they got to Istanbul, well, not even when because there were some parts of Istanbul I thought like they didn't show it as beautifully as they could. But then towards, I want to say after the first 30 minutes or so, started to get gorgeous looking, and camera work was on point. And then, I mean, it was a longer movie than Dr. No, so it was like you had more time to be sunk into this world. So it's like, at the end of it, I was like, other than the ending where it kind of threw me off a little bit, I was like, oh yeah, this is actually a much tighter movie than Dr. No, where Dr. No felt just like a bunch of scenes put together to make a story, and especially with the fact that Ursula shows up at the end. It was like,
yeah, this time Tatiana is a key part of the story from the very beginning.
Yeah, so yeah, it was a touch and go for a moment. Then I realized, yeah, if I was to put the two movies together, I would say From Russia with Love is a better made and better told story than
for sure
Dr. No.
And I really like Doctor No, but that's just how good
Yeah.
From Russia with Love is. It really is one of the best.
Yeah, so we'll continue to gauge the qualities of these films as they go along and try to compare them to the previous films before them. So another cool thing to do. So next up is Goldfinger, the movie that
Yeah.
really put James Bond on the map and really put the theme songs for James Bond
Oh yeah.
on the map. Because that song, still to this day, you play that song.
Goldfinger. Oh my God, so good.
um, you know that movie.
I'm gonna do that every single episode, by the way.
That movie. I mean, I'll talk more about it once we get to that movie. But that movie had some scary connotations. Because as a kid, I remember, even though the movies that I really watched was the Pierce Brosnan one first, I remember at least as a kid vaguely watching. It's kind of like the Indiana Jones movies and Star Wars. Like, it watched me more than I watched them. I didn't pay attention to them when they just came out, when they were on television as a kid. It wasn't like, oh, I'm watching. It was just like something that was happening. And I remember there was things in, I think, imagery in Goldfinger that kind of scared me, just more like. And I think when I rewatched it, I could tell you which scenes were the ones that really kind of give me that scary vibe or something like that. But yeah, I remember like around that time, it had some scary moments in Bond that was like, yeah, I wasn't attracted to Bond back then, you know. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, Goldfinger is next. Can't wait to get to that one and see if it holds up, because this would be my actual second time watching it on a whole. It is basically, I call it the Skyfall of that era, because it did what pretty much it did what Skyfall did in this era. It was the bigger movie of, like, out of the three, you know, movies. You had Doctor No, From Russia with Love, then Goldfinger was like the pop culture one. Almost looked like it was. I think it's. I might be mistaken, but I think it is the movie that is shot in wide. So they really wanted to go all out to make this a cinematic experience. And Skyfall, if they hired Roger Deakins of Skyfall, so that movie is. If you didn't like that movie's plot wise, that you can't deny that movie's gorgeously shot.
Yeah, it's fine.
Come on, Roger Deakins, man. Blade Runner, The Prisoner. What else did he shoot? I think he's doing Dune, if I'm not mistaken. I can't wait to see what Dune looks like.
Well, he does all of Denis' movies, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't think he did. Well, not the older ones. He didn't do The Enemy, and he didn't do.
Well, yeah, when he became famous.
Yeah, but when he became famous, Sicario. I think he did shoot Sicario, right? Roger Deakins.
I think so.
Yeah, and also if you're going back to, what's that movie that Tom Hanks did where he was like a gangster?
Road to Perdition.
Yeah, he shot that as well. Which he worked with Sam Mendes, so that's why Sam Mendes brought him back for Skyfall. So yeah, Skyfall. I put Goldfinger.
Only he had shot a better movie.
I don't know, man. I don't know what's your problem with Skyfall, but we'll get to Skyfall.
We'll get there. Like Skyfall, Goldfinger is a little overrated. But we'll get there. We'll get there next week.
Yep.
At me, I could use the follows.
All right, guys. So that'll bring us to the end of this episode. You can reach me on the Twitter at Marky Tundra. You can reach me at Instagram at Pop Culture Galaxy and on Facebook at Pop Culture Galaxy as well. Where can they reach you, Zach?
You can find me on Twitter at my name, Zach Wojner, at me about Goldfinger and Skyfall. You can find me on the Instagram at Zach Woj, and you can read my work at screenrant.com.
Nice. And don't forget to hit that like and that subscribe button and comment down below. Let me know what you thought of From Russia with Love, if that's amongst your top James Bond films. And
Ring the bell.
hit that notification bell to let it, so you can know when new videos drop.
What are push notifications?
It's just it's the bell.
Oh.
Yeah. So basically, I think without the bell, you still get notified, but on occasion. But when you hit the bell, it's you get the emails, or if you have the push, if you have, like for instance, if you have a phone, right? YouTube.
Wait, hold on 1 second. I'm not sure who this is. Nope, it's nobody. It was a familiar area code, and I was like, I don't know, maybe it was the interview I just did, if they had a follow up or something.
Oh, nice.
But otherwise, I would not have been so unprofessional.
It's fine. Yeah, push notifications is basically your phone, especially if you have your phone, giving you the alert that a new video dropped from your favorite subscriber.
That sounds super annoying. Don't ring the bell then.
No. Ring that bell, man. I like to know when, like, I look at my phone and I was like, oh, a new video from Grace, even though sometimes she word vomits a lot and talks a lot of shit. Like, come on, Grace, really? You believe that? Do you really believe that, Grace? Come on. But
I have no comment.
But I do enjoy her videos. Little Grace tangent for a second.
I have no comment on the subject.
All right, so yeah, I
want to keep all of my bridges intact.
That'll do it for the end. So until next time, folks, peace.
Indeed. It's not part of the podcast.
Oh shit.